My main concern tonight about what's going on as far as the presentation is concerned is I think you're doing it fast backwards, okay? I need to have the presentation first, and then something the presentation afterwards, okay? Which gives us a lot more foundation to base our questions on.
If I may just interject on that, we're going to have questions afterwards specific to what we're presenting on. There are a lot of people with a lot of feelings on infrastructure improvements, and as we said when we got here, part of why we're here is to listen and to have a discussion. We do value our customers' feedback. In working with the mayor and the administrator and the committee, a lot of what you're hearing tonight in this infrastructure improvement plan is based off of feedback that we've received from our customers. This is just another opportunity for us to have that interface, but we will absolutely take questions afterwards related to what we're presenting.
The mayor just said 9 o'clock, basically we're cutting off.
No, that's when we're going to start our presentation.
Okay, all right.
Well,
I
then
think we
take-
should have done that first, so people could have more clarity.
Carol,
on what they were asking.
he said he'd have opened up for questions later as well.
Okay, great. Okay, you said, and I think somebody else mentioned this as well, 50% of the polls are owned by JCP&L, 50% are owned by Verizon. Is one hand know what the other hand is doing as far as maintaining these polls? I mean, is there any cooperation as far as joining forces to maintain them?
So that question was already asked, I think John answered.
I don't think I got an answer, I'm sorry.
So, as you stated, about half the polls are Jersey Central, half the polls are Verizon. Jersey Central has I want to say, a pretty robust poll inspection program.
In conjunction with Verizon?
I'll speak about Verizon in just a moment. Each poll owner is really responsible for their own polls. So Jersey Central, as I think John mentioned, we inspect our polls every 10 years. Every single poll is inspected every 10 years. Not just a visual inspection, but based on the age of the poll, we do other types of inspections. At 12 years of age, we'll do what's called a sound and bore test. We'll hit it with a hammer. It sounds low tech, but it works. It tells you if the inside is hollow, and we'll also drill a hole in it to see how it looks inside. At the age of 30, we start doing partial excavation around the base of the pole, and we look for ground rot and other types of decay that might be there. And the inspectors are going based on our specifications for pole strength. And when those specifications are no longer met, we have some things that we can do to either reinforce the pole, or we may just have to replace the pole. And so that's what we do on a regular basis. As far as Verizon goes, and trust me when I say this, I have no intention of trying to throw Verizon under the bus, anything like that. But Verizon right now is going through some conversations with the BPU regarding their poll inspection program. And I guess I should say their lack of poll inspection program. As far as I understand, they haven't really been doing any poll inspections up until this year. And so they've started doing a lot of poll inspections. And so we're expecting that a lot of Verizon polls are going to need to be replaced. So many so that we've actually considered that in our budget next year, we're going to have like a Verizon transfer line item. Just because there's so many polls that we're expecting, we're probably going to have to transfer off of onto new polls. But that is strictly dealt with by the poll owner.
Okay,
and that'll be
BPU did
Verizon.
not require inspection by Verizon to inspect the
Well, I believe that the reason that Verizon is now being required to do that is because of the March storms. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the report that came out from the BPU and the recommendations that were made by board staff, but part of that deals with the poll inspections that need to be done, and I think that's probably one of the drivers that caused Verizon to have to really ramp this up for
Can you
them.
give date of that report?
Off the top of my head, I don't. I think it was in April. I think it's,
Of this year?
I believe so, yes. Oh, definitely this year. I think it was in April. But it is a publicly available report, and so you can take a look at it. It gives a number of recommendations.
Now, it's been mentioned tonight as well about over-earnings, I believe, that JCP&L has had some over-earnings in the past. And I'm wondering how much of that over-earnings is being invested back into the maintenance of your system?
As I said, that'll be the follow-up that I will give back to the town as well as to Rachel Kanapka.
Now, Now, also you mentioned that public hearing, started, I believe you said you filed in July, correct, July 13th?
Correct.
All right. How are you going to notify the public of those hearings and where they're going to be, location, time, et cetera, et cetera? Is it just going to be in the back of the newspaper? Are you going to actually mail notices to your customers?
As far as the notification, I will make sure that our customers are made aware of when the public hearings are. As I said, that is typically something that is done jointly between Jersey Central and the BPU, but I'll make sure that our customers are notified and are aware of when the hearings
So it's
are.
not just going to be in the back of the newspaper for us to look for?
Correct.
You've mailed to all your...
I'm not sure exactly how but we're going to figure that out and make sure that it's well publicized.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Sir.
Yeah, I've got a quick question. We have to leave because this went very much longer than we thought. Is there a website that we can see this some other time?
What I would suggest is that you can certainly go to our website. There's information. We also have, I'm not sure where it landed in the room.
Let me start.
Yeah.
We're going to start that presentation right now and all your questions until afterwards.
I just want to make an announcement. I'm recording the meeting tonight, and for anybody who's interested, this will be up on CILU's YouTube page later this evening.
All right, so again, thank you everyone for being here tonight. Thank you to the mayor and the committee for hosting us tonight. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to come out and speak with you and your residents and everybody here. So as we've been alluding to all night, we're here to talk about Reliability Plus. What is it? It's an investment plan, expedited investment plan into our distribution system. It's all in the way of, as we talk about, vegetation management, ensuring that our overhead lines have the clearance they need, instilling smart technologies into our system and telemetry, utilizing information and data flow in real time from our equipment, and so on and so forth. And we'll delve into the intricacies of that in just a moment. Just a little background on this proposal, this program that we submitted to the Board of Public Utilities back in July. We had announced our intention, actually in late February, to submit a similar proposal to the Board of Public Utilities based on requirements that they set forth when they reached out to all the electric distribution companies in New Jersey back in December. As we all know very well, in early March, we were hit with back-to-back winter storms. What that did, one positive, if you will, that came out of that, was that it was a great stress test on our system. We had ice, we had wind, we had snow, we had rain. We got down to the nuts and bolts of where our system was performing well and where it was not performing well. We went back to the drawing board on what we had announced our intention to submit in late February. And we more or less ripped that down and took another look through a different lens, having been through those two nor'easters, on how we can improve, how we can do better, what sort of equipment and technologies are out there that we could be utilizing right now that will have a somewhat immediate effect, something tangible that our customers are going to be able to see in terms of reliability. As John mentioned before, we are very proud of this. We do feel that we have submitted a package to the Board of Public Utilities that meets their requirements, that meets the metrics that they set. And so we'll get into a little more than that. So as we've discussed, approximately $400 million spent over 4 years, invested in approximately 4,000 separate projects throughout our service territory. The categories can be broken down into overhead circuit reliability and resiliency, substation reliability enhancement, distribution automation, and with that, that comes sort of the technology end on how do we automate things so that our crews can do things that computers cannot do. So
Could you speak a little bit louder, please?
Yes, sir. My apologies.
And so one way or the other, because you can't see that.
Sorry. All right, so again, the metrics, the requirements set were to make our system more resilient during extenuating circumstances, storms, that sort of thing. And so that's what our goal is with this. We expect that there will be approximately $1.9 billion in economic benefit. That's businesses that won't be without power, that are able to produce, manufacturers, that sort of thing. You'll see up here there is a mention of the initial increase for average residential customer on their bill. What we expect and anticipate is on average, so approximately 750 kilowatt hours of usage per month, that you'll see around 25 cents a month increase. That would build in over time. So for the first 6 months, you'll see a 25-cent increase. After that 6 months, you'll see another 25-cent increase. And that sunsets, or excuse me, not sunsets, but the threshold, the high mark for that is approximately $1.89 after that 4 years, and that is the final increase. That's what your bill will go up per month in total at the end. Again, phased in over time, and we will be required to produce documentation to the board of what we've spent, how we spent it, and what the reliability numbers show based on our investment. Are we investing in the right stuff, and so on and so forth. So this is kind of nailing into some of the more engineering stuff. So Ed, feel free to jump in at any point. There we go.
Okay, so from an engineering point of view, I was really involved with putting a lot of this together, so I'm just going to put it to you really straight, I guess. A lot of this I believe in a lot. I strongly believe in a lot of the things, all the things that we're putting out here. I spent many, I don't want to say sleepless nights, but very late nights trying to make this right. I really believe very strongly in our duty, our business, what we do. I feel very strongly that we have a service to our customers that we need to provide. And so I really do feel like what we're doing here is going to help. I wouldn't put something, I would feel bad standing before you and putting something out here that I did not believe was going to help you. So I'm going to talk to you about 3 major programs, and then there's some sub-programs under those that are going to help not just Homedale, but all Jersey Central Power and Light territory. The first one has to do with overhead circuits, reliability of overhead circuits. You can see it right there. We have some bullet points on here that kind of summarize what it is. But I want to talk to you a little bit about what these are, how we came up with them a little bit, and why it's a benefit. And obviously, in the question and answer, feel free to ask any questions, and I'll try to get more light as I can. So the first one that we have here on the top is the vegetation management. As John and Kieran mentioned, this is one of the largest things that we're planning to do. It's over $100 million of spend on vegetation management that we're planning to do, and as John alluded to, that's almost double what we normally spend. So it's really a very serious undertaking in terms of vegetation management. So there's a couple things that we're planning to do. As John mentioned, we're doing the ash trees. We're wanting to cut down basically any ash tree that is within falling distance of our lines. That's not only in Homedale, but across our territory. And certainly there's some power lines that would be feeding Homedale that aren't in Homedale. So we certainly think that's a benefit. We're also looking at hazard trees. Any type of tree, whether it's, and I'm not a forester or an arborist, but whether it's the silver maple, which is apparently the bane of our existence, or the black locust, or whatever other type of tree that's out there, if it looks like it's going to fall, at any point, we want to chop it down. That sounds blunt, but that's what we want to do. Anything that could endanger our infrastructure, whether it's going to hit our primary at the top, whether it's going to hit the low-lying cable TV line, if we think it's going to be a danger, we want to get rid of it. So that's part of it as well. And the third part of it is dealing with overhang. One of the things that we face in terms of causing outages is when there's growth in the canopy, above the distribution. And limbs can break off, they fall on the lines, things can break. It can be, sometimes it's temporary faults, sometimes it's sustained or permanent faults, or whatever. Typically, we do that type of trimming in what we call the lockout zone, which is basically anywhere from the substation up to the first device. So that's a good and important part of our circuit, but it's not really the whole circuit, certainly. So what we're going to be doing as part of this program is in certain tree outage-related, or tree outage-prone areas, we're looking to extend that zone, not just to the first area, but anywhere that we have three-phase infrastructure. We're looking to remove all of the canopy on certain of those circuits. And again, that's identified based on the reliability. So if you have a circuit that has pretty good reliability, no tree-related outages, well, we're not going to spend money over there. We're going to spend the money where we really need to spend that money. So that's the tree-related vegetation management program. And John, feel free to jump in at any point, because I know you love the trees. The second thing that we want to do has to do with these little devices here. I wish I had one for you. It's kind of fun to have like a little show and tell. This device is called the Trip Saver 2. It's manufactured by S&C. And is an ampersand. If you want to look it up on the internet, it's S&C. Just type down. So it's like SANC. It's kind of a really neat device. In the past, we've had recloser. I guess I shouldn't take for granted. Recloser, what is it? Everybody knows what a fuse is. You have a kind of a fault on our system, something happens, the fuse melts, blows open, and then you gotta wait until somebody comes by to fix the problem, if there is one, and then they have to go and put the fuse back in. So in the last 10, 20 years, we've made a really concerted push to replace fuses with something called reclosers. And so what reclosers do is they sense the fault or they sense the problem, they open up, and then hopefully, as what we found it to be about 60% of the time, hopefully that fault will go away. So maybe it was a squirrel, maybe it is a tree limb, maybe it was a bolt of lightning, whatever it was, hopefully that problem is gone, and now that device can close right back in, and everybody has power again, and everybody's happy. So those things can be kind of expensive, especially when you're installing them. Sometimes you have to do a lot of infrastructure modifications, sometimes you have to install another pole, and there can be all kinds of things that make that very difficult to install these reclosers, which I think you can see would be a very beneficial thing to have. Well, with the advent of this device, which came out within the last 2 years, as I said, it's the S&C Trip Saver 2. What it actually does is that you can install this in what's called a cutout. So if you look on our utility poles, you'll see what we call cutouts all the time. I think this thing had a laser. Where did it go? I guess I can't really show it very easily. No, not really easily. Oh, wait, maybe. I'm going to get this for you here. There's this. No, we're good. I got it. All right. So that piece. Thank you. So that piece right there on the right side there is called a cutout. You're going to see them all over. They're like ubiquitous on the utility system. You can put anything in there. You can put a cutout into it. You can put a fuse into it. You can put a solid switch into it, disconnect switch. It's like all over the place. So what we can do now is instead of having to like rebuild the whole pole and do all kinds of infrastructure modifications that are very expensive, we can now just basically take the fuse that was in the cutout and install a recloser. And so this can have a lot of dramatic impact on reliability. We found that the installation of reclosers really helps a lot with those two metrics that I was really talking to you about before that I find are really important, which are safety, which is the overall uptime of your circuit, as well as the safety, which is the number of sustained outages that you might experience. So this takes any outage that could be, an hour, 2 hours. In a storm, it might be 8 hours a day. For somebody just to come by and throw a fuse in, this will be now a 5-second outage or a 10-second outage. We're looking to install about 3,000 of these devices across our system, and there's several of those that are going to be in Homedale as well. And it's not something that we're just going to be installing as part of the IIP, but it's something that we say, hey, this is a really good piece of technology. Let's try to implement this on an ongoing basis as well. So not just part of this IIP, but ongoing, we're going to be utilizing this device. And I think it's going to have a really strong and good impact on our reliability. So those are the main parts of the overhead circuit reliability program that I think are really worthy of your attention. Let's see if we can get this going. Okay, the second part has to do with our substation reliability. There's a lot of talk about our substations, and the gentleman over here was mentioning the substations are not in the prettiest condition. I can attest to that. That's being nice, right? I certainly understand that. We know that there are improvements that could and should be made in the substation field, and so this is part of that. So what we're looking specifically to do as part of our substation equipment replacement program, again, this is really focused on the distribution. We're looking to replace any and all oil-filled circuit breakers in our substations with new stuff. So that could be switchgear lineups that have oil breakers in them. Switchgear looks like a big box and it has lots of switches in it or breakers in it. Or it could be freestanding circuit breakers. But the long and short of it is, a lot of this equipment is obsolete. There's no manufacturers in business anymore that make parts for these things. There's nothing that we can really do if one breaks except to replace it. Not only that, but we have environmental concerns with having oil-filled equipment on the property. You know, if one fails and we having to dump a whole bunch of oil, you know, people have wells, people have, you got the tributaries and all that, feeding into rivers and streams and all that kind of thing. And so we really want to get rid of that environmental concern as well. So any and all distribution level oil-filled breakers, we're looking to replace those. And get rid of them and replace them with modern equipment that has much better ratings and much better longevity and reliability, which is ultimately what we're all looking for. So that's one of the things that we're looking for here. Other stuff that is on here is the flood mitigation. We're looking to, in some sites, several sites that were afflicted during Sandy, we had a lot of flooding and a lot of damage in there. We've installed some flood mitigation measures that are good. You might have seen them in some of our substations. You might see like these really tall sandbags or plastic-looking sand-filled equipment that does its job, keeps out the flooding. But there's costs associated with that, and it certainly has a lifespan. And so some of the things that we're trying to do here is upgrade that to something that might be a little bit more permanent and even automatic. Some of the equipment that we're looking to install are automatic floodgates, where when the flood waters rise, the gates come right up with no human intervention required. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking to install in some of our flood-prone areas. I think it's 9 substations that we're looking to do this flood mitigation on. Again, this is where we identify that there is a potential problem when we are faced with a major storm like we did with Sandy. And the last thing is the mobile substations. When we do have a substation failure, and it's inevitable, you're going to have substation equipment that fails. One of the things that we use to overcome that and get people back in lights if they're not already back in lights is by virtue of this mobile substation. Basically, it's a substation on wheels. It has a transformer on it, has circuit breakers on it, has all the equipment that's required that's in a substation, except that it's mobile. And so we're looking to replace and upgrade our mobile fleet with 4 new mobile substations. And that will help out a lot as well in terms of boosting our reliability. So that's some of the substation things we're trying to do. And the last thing will come up. There we go. Is distribution automation. This is the part that I feel most passionate about. It's a lot of new technology and a lot of stuff that really, I think, ultimately will help out in the long run. There's 3 main programs. 4 main programs that I really want to talk about. The first one is, we call it, and by the way, all this stuff is in the filing. It's public. You can look at it. You can read about it. There's lots and lots of text that will probably explain it more and or maybe even better than what I'm explaining it to you. But it is available. It's even posted on the First Energy website. But the first one I want to talk about, we call it Install SCADA Line Devices. SCADA is S-C-A-D-A. It stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. And so what does that mean? That means we can see the device, it can see us, and it's sending us information. And so what we're trying to do is expand our visibility of the grid beyond just the substation fence. Because right now we can see all the substations. We can see all the devices in the substations. We know when they operate. We know what they're doing. But once it leaves that fence, we really don't know what's going on. And that's why we rely a lot on when you guys call in and say, hey, I'm out of power. We have a database and a mainframe that takes all that information and then it predicts, like, okay, I have, John, Joe, and Betty are calling, and it's probably this device over here that's causing the problem, so you should go look at this. But we really have no idea other than that. So this will actually push out the visibility quite a lot. What this will do, this install SCADA program, we're going to be replacing every recloser that we have on our system that does not have SCADA with one that does have SCADA. This is a really large undertaking, and I think will produce a large step change in terms of our reliability and our response time. We're looking to install over 800 reclosers as part of this. That's over 80%, no, 90% of the reclosers that we have on the system. Looking to install modern equipment that can communicate back to our operations center. So not only is the equipment new generation better, it provides more information than the old, and we can have direct control over it and information from it in real time. I think that's a big deal, to put that out on the distribution level. The second thing that we're looking to do is, there's a lot of recloser projects and a lot of SCADA projects that have to do with automation because it is really a big deal. The second thing that we're looking to do is we've identified some areas where, how should I put this? We have, let's say, critical customers. We have hospitals, we have municipal buildings, we have police stations. We have things that you might call are really critical, especially during a major storm, where they're out of power during a major event, and that's a big deal. So we identified pockets of those areas where they are near junctions of where two circuits kind of come together. So you got one circuit over here, you got another circuit over here, and then you got several of those critical customers kind of like right on the cusp of both of them. And so what we did is we are going to plan to install what we call loop schemes or automatic tie schemes around those areas, such that if the source, the normal feed, we'll say, for those critical customers is lost, we're automatically going to transfer them to another feed. And that's going to happen without human intervention. That's going to happen without anybody having to do or say anything. It's just going to do it by itself. And that transfer can happen in less than 2 minutes. And so, again, I think that's a really big deal. We're looking to do, I think, over the old Jersey Central, it's about 70 specific locations where we're looking to do this. I think Home Builders maybe 2. Is it 2? So again, looking to do something like that, and we continue to do this on a year in, year out basis. Every year we install actually 15 of these schemes, so we're looking to do like about 70 more with this IIP. So I think it's a benefit, and certainly a benefit during major storms where you may not have communications, you may not have all the manpower that would be required to manually go out and open this, close this, do that to get your town hall, police station, fire department, sewage station, water pumping station, all that back. And so this can help with providing some resilience, some redundancy, and some hardening to the system, even like I said, when you have a big storm. So that's another thing. Another thing that we're looking to do, again with reclosers, is we're identifying areas where we have I guess we'll call it main line fuses. So where we have fuses that are protecting a large number of customers, 3 phases, so the largest amount of infrastructure that we would have. And we're going to replace those with reclosers as well. We prioritize this particular program. This one's called the Circuit Protection and Sectionalization Program. There's another component to it that has to do with safety. Because the circuits that we selected for this program are all 4800 volt Delta circuits, and there's some backfeed issues that come with Delta, if you're familiar with some of the more intricate parts of the power system. But regardless, the way we identified these is we looked for fuses that had really large areas that they were protecting. So let's say, maybe these fuses were protecting an area that was like 4 miles long or 3 miles long. That's a lot of
exposure, where you could have, you know, a tree limb fall down, or a lightning strike, or whatever, and now you've got all those customers out of power. So we're looking to replace a lot of those fuses with, like I said, reclosers. Again, all these reclosers are going to have SCADA information back to our central operations center so that they can see and react appropriately. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. So the last thing that we're looking to do has to do with, again, telemetry and information back to our operations center. There's kind of a long-term plan. Perhaps you've heard of some of these terms like ADMS, smart grid, things like that. And really what those are talking about or leading to is a system where you can have all of these different individual components, and they all feed information and telemetry into kind of a master computer, we'll call it. And that master computer uses all the available data to say, okay, I see this, I see this, I see all these different voltages, all these different loads, all the state of the system, and here's some problems that you might have, here's some solutions that you might have, and ultimately, it might start to even do that by itself. In other words, it will control the system on its own, obviously with human oversight. That's like in the future. That's not next year, that's not 5 years from now, but maybe 10 years from now. And I'm throwing this out as speculation. I don't know what's going to happen with this technology and how economical it will be to roll it out. But we know that that's going to be coming. And by installing all this information, installing all this infrastructure, we're kind of getting ourselves ready for that. And part of that, as I mentioned, the fourth part of the distribution automation program is installing additional telemetry at our substations. So right now we get a lot of information about this breaker is open, this breaker is closed, we have such and such amount of load on this transformer. But we can get a lot more information, and we really need a lot more information if we're going to operate this grid as efficiently and effectively as we possibly could, especially with all this automation that we're talking about. And so part of the program is to invest in those substations and put additional telemetry, more metering, give us all the information that we really need on a real-time basis to operate this thing as it can be run if you have all the information and all the parts in place. So those are really the 4 parts of the distribution automation. Like I said, I feel really strongly and passionate about it because I know there's a lot of benefits to be had in there. It just needs to be built. And I feel like there's a step change of reliability that we could experience if we were able to put all this in play. So that's, I think that's pretty much it for this little situation here. Of course, I got the little pen, so it doesn't work. But that's what we've got in terms of this IIP. Kieran, I don't know if you have any other comments, or John, that you wanted to make.
Just if you had heard that Ed used a term, he referred to it as the IIP, and really that just is kind of the generic term that's given to it. It's for Infrastructure Investment Program. So that's the generic name for it. JCP&L is referring to the IIP that we filed with the board as the Liability Plus. So I just wanted to make that clarification. Yes?
Question. A lot of this is new technology. What is the warranty on it? If there's failure, who's the recourse? Obviously, the concern would be we put all this stuff in, a lot of it starts failing, and then we as ratepayers have to pay for it. So
Absolutely. Yeah, so let me talk a little bit about that. So the stuff that we're putting in is not like it just rolled off the assembly line or like, hey, this looks kind of neat, let's try it. So the Trip Saver 2, which is that cutout mounted device, it's been installed in Florida, and they have over, last I checked, it's like 80,000 of these devices. I spoke with the S&C rep, and they said they had so many that they wanted that they had to build their own factory in Florida just to supply that utility FP&L with all the pieces that they wanted.
And how long have they been in operation?
So they've been in operation for 2 years. And you'll realize that they went through a pretty serious hurricane, was it this year, Irma? Pretty serious hurricane this year with Irma, and by all means, by all measurements, it was a success. So we look at that, and we look at a lot of other utilities which are also using it, and we say, this seems like a good device. It has a proven track record. This isn't the first iteration of the device. This is actually the second, as I mentioned, it's the Trip Saver 2. So we think that there's good, it's proven itself, I think. And so that's why we're willing to try this new type of technology on our system. In terms of the other stuff that that I mentioned, when I talk about reclosers that have SCADA and all this kind of thing, like, is this brand new? No, in fact, it's not. We've had this type of technology available probably for about 5 years, where we've been installing this type of recloser exclusively, actually, on our system. So it's the vendor actually that we're using. We have a very close relationship with. We've actually gone back and forth about some improvements that we were looking for and some different things, and so we have a good relationship with them, and we feel really confident that, you know, if it's not this vendor, there's many other vendors out there that provide this type of a device that's going to work, and it's not an unproven technology. So I don't know if that answers your question totally.
I mean, 2 to 4 years isn't a big track record when we're talking about it, but you qualified it, so yeah.
Right. I mean, again, it's technology is, you know, the iPhone 7 was great in its time, and now it's like, well, you know, who really wants that anymore? So things are moving along very quickly. Am I supposed to call it? I don't know.
Have you done any cost analysis of using this technology versus using humans today? Number one.
Versus humans?
Today you set up crew, right?
Oh, right.
Okay. And then number two, what is your plan to have spare parts? Because these things become a single point of failure, right? I mean, essentially, I'm in the technology business, so it's like,
Sure.
you're probably using Internet of Things kind of technologies to do some of these collection of telemetry and those kind of analysis and event correlation and all that. But the point is, when one of these units fail, then the whole system's going to crash. So how are you going to have spare parts?
Okay, good question. Okay, so I'm not sure if there's any particular device that you were thinking about, or just in general.
The SCADAs and the reclosers.
So a lot of these things are kind of commoditized. In other words, it's not like, oh, this is the most, you know, special type of modem that we need, and it's only this modem that we need, or, you know, this is the only kind of recloser we can use, and if, you know, we don't have this kind of recloser, it doesn't work. And right now, there's probably 4 or 5 different manufacturers that produce the type of recloser that we need, and in addition to all the different other kind of parts that we might need. So if we find that, you know, let's say, oh, this recloser's failed, oh, that company's not in business anymore, it's not a problem. There's many other vendors, big name vendors, Siemens, Cooper, ABB, that are producing these types of devices. So that's not really a concern. The other device that you could be thinking about is that Trip Saver, which is, again, it's a relatively low-cost, small device. The beauty of that device is actually that if the device were to fail, as I mentioned, since it goes right into a cutout, what you do is you take it out and you put a fuse in, and at least in the short term, and you have the same level of protection that you had before. And then when you have the opportunity, you go out there with another device that's similar, whether it's that generation or a newer generation. I don't really see that as going to be a problem in the future. I think the technology is going to improve as we go along, and if it's not the Trip Saver 2, maybe it's the Trip Saver 5. You know, who knows what's going to be.
Yeah, I'm sure that's, no, my question really was, what's your plan to keep spare parts inventory to replace these things?
Well, I think that my plan would be, especially with the Trip Saver, is keep several available in the shop, because really it's becoming to the point where it's a commodity. You know, you can put these kind of anywhere. So if you have one fail, you have one on the truck, you put another one in, and really you lose nothing. And again, the cost is so low, and it's going to continue to drop, I'm sure, with time, that there's really no barrier for us to do something like that. You also mentioned, I guess I'll go in a second. The other thing that you had asked about was, what's the cost versus humans? We actually did an analysis on that, and that's kind of one of the things that drove us to install more and more reclosers. You know, we costed out, what does it cost to roll a truck over to this location and do a patrol and then find out, hey, there's nothing wrong, let's put another fuse back in. And it turns out that it takes about 2 truck rolls for this thing to pay for itself in terms of, you know, operations and maintenance costs. So to me, that's pretty good payback. You know, this thing is expected to last at maximum interruption rating, 400 interruptions. So, you know, 400, you know, it's a pretty fast payback period. So we really think that it's a good idea, and it's something that's going to pay for itself and ultimately reduce costs. Okay, I don't know how to do this. Go ahead.
How can you tell the difference between a JCP&L pole and a Verizon pole?
Good question. I want to say the good-looking poles are ours and the
They all look the same to me.
Really, the pole tag is pretty much the only way. The pole tag is like a metal strip that's on it. So any Jersey Central pole will have one of three things. It'll start with NJ, it'll start with JC, or it'll have like a really long name with a lot of numbers on it. It'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, A, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, something like that. Really long. That's the only way that you're really going to know if it's a Jersey Central poll or a Verizon poll. Verizon polls will start with BT for Bell Telephone or VZ for Verizon. So that's the only way you're really going to know. I mean, obviously we have records for poll ownership and that type of thing, but if you want to just look at the poll and say, hey, whose is this? That's how you would do it.
So if we don't like the tilt of the poll, we should check the label and call it the big daddy
Certainly
of
something
that
that you
poll.
could do. It's certainly something.
Or
you could
tweet
do.
the BPU as we've done early in the year.
There you go. Twitter is alive and well. Yes.
Middletown.
I know vegetation management is a major part of the investment, so you're basically doubling your
Correct.
spending on that to
Correct.
100 million, right?
Yes.
Being that that is the biggest source of outages, I think you said tree-related outages are the biggest source, how will doubling the investment affect the overall number of outages? So if you could quantify in any way how many outages you have, what percentage are tree-related right now, and will doubling the investment have the number of outages, or what's the relationship there?
Okay, I think I can answer you. I don't have the exact numbers. I went through this whole big calculation of how these things work, or at least how we think it works based on history and all that kind of thing. Your first question, remind me again what the first part of the question
It
was.
was basically like, I know it's the biggest source of outages right now.
Right.
Does that mean it's like over half the number
Right,
of
okay,
outages?
yeah.
Like where are
Yeah.
we kind of?
Understood.
Yeah.
Yeah, so especially during storms, that is going to be a huge part. Last I checked, and I can get you the exact numbers and we can get back to it, but I'm pretty sure that numbers, especially during major storms or big storms, like 60% of our outages are caused by trees. And you can quantify that in different ways, like number of interruptions, number of minutes that were outage and all that. But I think 60% is a pretty fair number. And that can be even higher in some of our areas. Some of our areas have over 80% caused by trees.
I think in our town,
We're very-
here, you speak to this, it's definitely greater than 60%.
Yeah.
You're always telling me what,
that number.
Yeah, I mean, that, and
it's closer to 90.
It could be. It could be.
So huge, the vast majority
Vast
of our.
majority.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not like,
Yep,
is a very similar case.
yeah, I figured.
it's, it's not like the stuff falls out of the sky
Mhm.
routinely on it, by itself. It's almost always caused by something,
Mhm.
and most often that something is a tree. And so we're trying to deal with that. So that's, I think, we're.
So by doubling the investment, I guess, or are we able, is it,
Right, so.
I guess how much is the current investment
Right,
actually
right.
fixing?
Right.
I guess, is the 50 million or whatever it is you're currently spending annually, dealing with 10%? Like,
Right. So
How big of a bucket is it?
What we tend to find is that over the 4-year cycle, that, right after your tree trimming, not as many tree-related outages. But as things start to grow, we get further away from that period of, we really just cleared that out, we inspected every tree, everything is good, trees tend to decay and rot and all that kind of thing, and so they can tend to go up. Again, we can get more information on this for you, but after we go through and we do this thing, it's usually like about half the amount of outages that take place like the following year. It might even be less than that. But we see a definite improvement every single time we do this. Go ahead, please.
And I just want to add too is that part of what we're doing here is it's all tree-related outages are not created equal. So for example, what we're targeting is you could have a tree limb that comes down, hits a line, and causes an outage to 3 homes. Or you could have the identical tree limb come down on another line in another circuit, another part of town, and you could outage 1,000 customers. So part of what this is doing is everything is being done and looked at and analyzed to say, where strategically are we going to get the biggest bang for the buck? So that we're targeting those, not only that it has to have a large number of tree-related outages, but also what we refer to as the customer minutes. So the density of customers on that circuit. So you're going to go after those higher density ones first to make sure that you're really going to have an impact. Because remember, as I would describe this is like, working at the utility, right? As you feel like you're trying to steer an aircraft carrier, and everything you do is happening very gradually and slowly. The way this has been proposed and brought to the board is that we want to come right out of the box, say we get approval for this in early 19, that we want to be able to start implementing this and seeing an immediate an immediate impact, positive impact on reliability. And that's really what it's designed to do, is that not only is it going to be a very cost-effective use of the money that we spend, but that we need to make sure that it starts having an impact, virtually immediately on the system. And that's why things like TripSaver 2, to be able to have a crew go up there, literally go up in a bucket, remove the existing fuse, put this device in and come back down out of the air, 5 minutes later, and now you've got this technology up and working and running. That's the type of, high impact that what this whole program has been designed to do. Yes? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, I've tried a couple times and everybody's asked a question that I have. Can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I like the ideas that are high tech because it's clean and it won't really hurt my property personally. But I live near the railroad tracks, so I'm real concerned about my property and its value. So I have a question about underground lines. Because I have a feeling they would dig up my property if they did it, and I want to know the extent and how much money you expect to spend and how many properties you would like to go into with underground lines that don't have them already.
No, the plan really, largely for what we're going to be doing with underground circuits, is to be reconductoring those circuits. So that, for example, if let's say there is an underground cable in a development that is underground, and we'll just pick a number and say the cable is 40 years old, we're going to be targeting to going into those locations and replacing that cable.
Okay, you're not coming into properties that have above ground lines.
That is correct.
Okay, you don't see that in your future either.
No, again, because really there's, and it gets into a whole nother story. But for those developments that were designed and built as underground they're remaining obviously underground. Those designed and built that are overhead are remaining overhead.
So if they're underground already, what are you going to do to those?
In certain, not everywhere, but in certain instances where again we'll go back and look at the reliability data, but a combination of, let's say, an underground cable that we're noticing is faulted, and that there's an increased number of faults that are occurring more rapidly, and we're checking the age of that infrastructure. That's going to be one of the areas that we're going to target.
So you might have to go into those grounds, but you'd have to in order to fix it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, and I like all the clean projects.
I'm sorry, what?
It's only been 2 weeks since I don't have to worry about the transmission line.
Oh.
It's kind of like, it's almost scary. But so I really don't want to hear about any property devaluations ever. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Yes, please.
So the reclosers, you have like X amount you'll be installing as part of this project, and you said there would be a few in Homedale. Do they protect the whole town, or are you prioritizing these areas like you talked about where it could affect thousands of homes as opposed to 5?
Yeah, in other words, and remember that these circuits, as they're designed, they're not following municipality boundaries. So, for example, there will be, and I can't even name it, I can just say it as a solid statement, that there are circuits in substations outside of Homedale that serve Homedale. And that as long as we're going to put this type of protection on these circuits that will help to mitigate and reduce the size and scope of an outage, it doesn't have to be a trip saver installed within the confines of Homedale to benefit Homedale.
Okay, so is there a forecast beyond these 4 years where our towns will be completely protected? Like everybody would be protected with these, or we're not at that point of that?
Yeah, I would say we want to walk before we run. I am very pleased that we are taking a rather forward and aggressive approach at installing the new technology. Again, we're not putting all our eggs in one basket. We're not looking to pigeonhole ourselves and do something with this one device that we can only have this one company, all of a sudden it doesn't manufacture it anymore. But again, as Ed explained before, that there's going to be new technologies developing all the time, and we're going to be watching this, and we're going to be looking at these different technologies as they develop, because I think you're going to see an acceleration of this, and that we just want to make sure that we continue to be giving all this technology a fair shake and a look at it. And if, for example, as we find that we install these trip savers and we find that they're really doing everything that we expect them to do, absolutely, as Ed indicated, we're going to continue to work on installing those, and whether we want to come out with, reliability plus 2.0, and then we're going to say, hey, we want to go another 3,000 of these. But again, because of the the beauty of it is because it is relatively compact and it's something that can easily be installed or uninstalled, is what's good about it.
Okay, and then the device we were talking about where if there's a line out, those customers could be flipped to another line, and I think you're saying you're doing 2 in Homedale. They're being prioritized like for police and hospitals and that kind of thing first.
Yeah, so most of the loop schemes or the tie schemes, however you want, the automatic transfer schemes that we're looking to do are being prioritized by basically where are there big pockets of, like you mentioned, town halls, police stations, fire stations, water pumping stations, and all that kind of thing. There are some that we just put in for, well, these are really large pockets of customers, so that will be, a good thing also. But the major driver for most of the loop schemes is pockets of critical customers, like you mentioned.
Thank you.
Errol?
Yes. You mentioned 800 reclosers are going to be replaced, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. What geographical area will that cover?
The entire Jersey Central Power and Light territory.
Which is?
Portions of Sussex, Warren, Hunterdon, Somerset, Middlesex, Mercer, I'm missing one, Passaic, Essex, Monmouth, Ocean.
236 municipalities.
Wow, okay. And basically you said that'll cover 90% of what exists now, is that correct?
Yeah, and we're basically replacing about 90% of our electronic reclosers that we have out there right now.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hi. First of all, I just want to say thanks also for the level of detail you're giving, like the questions and just the technical information. I just really appreciate how much you're sharing, so thank you for that. I should have said it earlier. Earlier you had talked about the 3 reliability metrics that you guys use to kind of gauge how things are going, and the 2 that you said this would most specifically impact are SAIDI and SAIFI.
Right.
And I'm just wondering if SAIDI currently is at 120 minutes of outage per year per customer, and SAIFI is at about 1 to slightly more than 1 major outages per customer. How will this project impact those metrics based on your projections?
Well, that's a great question. So it's hard to say how much the recloser projects will help. I think that the projects that will help most with safety and then SAIDI, well, let's start with safety. The ones that are going to help safety the most are the ones that where we're installing new reclosers. So for example, if we're replacing a fuse with a recloser, like with all the trip saver installations, that's really going to have a strong impact. Or the other project I mentioned, the circuit protection and sectionalization, that's going to have a huge impact. The forestry program is going to have a huge impact on that type of thing. Some of these other programs we're talking about, like the 800 plus reclose we're replacing, we're getting SCADA, that's really going to have more of an impact on the restoration piece, where we're seeing, hey, this thing's open, let's get somebody out there, that type of thing. In terms of quantifying it, I don't really have a number in mind as far as like how much that's going to help. I'm certainly I can come up with a number and give it to you. I know we came up with a number before we filed this.
Okay.
But I can come back.
Yeah, I'm just curious, but from a BPU perspective, it's like, what's the cost benefit? If we're going to be charging customers $400 million, what's the tangible benefit that will result to the average customer in your territory?
And just so you know, you're exactly right, which is that to put this program together is the return on investment in and of itself is significant. So as an example, we talked earlier tonight about poles, and there was a pole that's leaning. So we talk about maybe that's a cosmetic lean, but we looked at and talked to consultants, and we talked about, okay, if we were to invest X number of dollars into pole replacements, what kind of immediate impact would that have on reliability? And we were shocked to see how low the number was. So here we all talk tonight and say, you know what, I would love nothing more than to pull out of here, drive down Crawford's Corner Road, and see these lined up like, like tin soldiers, one after another, straight as an arrow, boom, 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 boom. Bottom line is, guess what? It does not have the type of impact on reliability that you would think that it does. It's more of it looks good and feels good, as opposed to it actually is impacting reliability. So that's why, again, what we talked about earlier is, we've put this package together in a way so that it will have tangible, significant impact. And I was going to tease Ed and say, as you said before, like, can you quantify a number? We're saying, well, Ed's job is going to depend on it, because this is the guy who's the architect of this plan largely. We damn well hope that it's going to in fact do just what he said it is, right? Which is going to have a significant impact. And as that one, whatever that movie was, I forget the name, but it's going to be like, show me the reliability. And that's really what Jerry Maguire, thank you. So that's really what I would say you're going to see. BPU is going to be saying to Jersey Central, you want to do reliability plus? Okay, do reliability plus. Show me the reliability.
It's sort of in the same vein. How does the current numbers, which you said, stack up with other utilities in the eastern U.S.? And how do you hope to be compared after this project's done? There's 120 minutes per customer. Where is that on a scale? Are the companies doing 10? Are there companies doing 500? Where do you rank? And what can we hope for?
I'll answer to the best of my ability. This may be a surprise. I don't know if it will be or not, but that information for other utilities is actually not public. And they don't have to give it out. And so they don't. Actually, I would really like to get my hands on a public service, what do they call it? Well, the annual report. We have to put an annual report to the BPU every year, and it has lots of stuff in it. And I always say, man, I really like to see what ACE, Atlantic City Electrics looks like, or I really like to see what public services looks like. But that's just not information that we're privy to.
And just if I had, I think part of how we would answer the question is, I'm rather impressed with everybody. Normally we just say to a group and say that the average customer is experiencing 2 hours of an outage per year. When you look at it, it's like, that's like 99.9997 like reliability. Most folks in the room would start rolling their eyes and say, what are you kidding me? I'm out more than I'm in, But in fact, that is, when you average out over that 1.1 million customers that we serve, or 1.1 million meters, that's what it averages out to be. I think in reality, to answer the question as best I can, is that every utility has its own issues and has its own unique circumstances and challenges. So that if, for example, you could be a utility like Jersey Central, and that where we are and what the service territory that we have, we are the proud owners of, by far, the highest tree density of any part of the state. Atlantic City Electric has trees, certainly, but a lot of it being in the Pine Barrens, a lot of the trees are actually shorter than the primary. But then you could also go back and look at that and say, well, what's their cross to bear? They're going to have something else unique to their service territory. PSE&G is going to have something unique to their service territory. So it's really to try to come in and do an apples-to-apples comparison on any of these type of indices. I don't think it's as productive. I don't think it's going to give you that aha moment, because, as I said, we all have our own special issues. When it comes to what we're doing, we've got certain issues along, from Sandy Hook, down to Seaside, right? That, that infrastructure that's along the ocean, where you've got issues with salt buildup, you've got, so there's a set of unique circumstances there as well. So there's things that have to be managed slightly different along there versus what you're going to be doing in Sussex County. So even within our own service territory, it's hard to compare apples to apples because of these challenges, if you will.
Got more squirrels.
No squirrels.
Yeah, can I ask a question about the reclosers? Years ago I used to discuss with PSE&G some reliability issues I had where I worked, and they said that, yes, there's like, I don't know, they get 3 shots or 5 shots to close, to reclose. Is that set by the utility, by the BPU, or you can change depending on what you want to do?
Yeah, we
6 cycle squirrel.
Right, within the